ADHD Rewired, episode 474. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Emily Sussman. When asked why you use mindfulness daily, Emily Sussman, certified instructor in mindfulness-based stress reduction, replied, "It's like breathing. You must breathe to survive, hence mindfulness." Emily has over 20 years experience empowering others, and she also has ADHD. She says that discovering the true purpose of mindfulness has awakened and make me, that sentence is reading strangely. So I'm just,
that's the dyslexia with the ADHD. And I spell checked it 3 times with Grammarly.
So I think we'll just maybe even use that for the intro. And
that sounds fine.
Sounds fine. Because growth is messy, and let's just show people
none of us
what
are
it is.
perfect, and I'm very upfront about what my issues are, because there are plenty of people who can relate to it.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the things I hear often from listeners, that it's sort of the in-between stuff, like not the words that are being said, but the way that they're being said, or
exactly.
the rabbit holes we kind of go down, that actually makes people feel very understood and seen. And so right out of the gate, here we go. People being understood.
Welcome to ADHD,
So, all right. So you have ADHD, you have a diagnosis with learning disabilities, other mental health stuff. So, you're in good company.
Yep.
Tell us a bit of your story and how you got into mindfulness-based stress reduction.
At my age, I don't want to go too far back because we'd be here forever. So born in the 60s, went to school in the late 60s, early 70s. So after within the 60s and 70s, there was no 504 or IEPs or any assistance for students who had really difficult learning disabilities. Usually you went to what's called a resource room back then. Mm-hmm. And they tracked you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being the worst, 1 being the best. So all throughout my mandatory school years, it was assumed that I would never read above a 5th grade level. And all of these things were said to me, and all you have to do is tell me I can't do something. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, you want to bet? It was just part of my personality. So over the years or the decades, I trained myself to read, to learn, and then to deal with my mental health issues. Then I became an advocate because my children were starting to deal with the public school system. And going through it, I knew about it, even though they did have services. The key word is appropriate, and they determine what is appropriate.
Yeah, so we don't talk a lot about the education system on this podcast because
I'm sorry.
No, but I wanted to. It's an interesting point because I know that we have a lot of parents who also have kids who have IEPs and 504. So just for some context, that when you're saying the word appropriate, that it comes from the what's called FAPE, or Free and Appropriate Public Education, which is the law in the United States. Also not stated in the law what the hell the word appropriate means.
Yes, and I'm also studying for my certification in rehabilitation counseling, and that I deal with that I work with a lot of people with disabilities, and that's part of what I do as well. So, it's part of the Disability Act. It's part of the Rehabilitation Act. So it's I'm very familiar with it because it has a lot to do with how you transition out of secondary school and where you're going to from there. There's services for all this stuff.
Let me ask you this. How was it for you as a parent who, so as a kid, you went through special education,
Yep.
and how was it for you now navigating this as a parent, like emotionally?
Angry.
Mm.
Angry because I knew that they were not going to offer her what she needed. It was because she fell in between. She wasn't severe enough and she wasn't not capable. She was academically brilliant. She just had anxiety and high functioning Asperger's. And that's what it was called before the DSM-5 came out. Now it's all under this big one umbrella. When they started counseling me and counseling her and bringing her in, and the social anxiety started to show, all I could say is they didn't understand her. They didn't understand where she was coming from. I mean, back in the 90s, it was a challenge. My older daughter had challenges too, but she didn't have the social anxiety. And my younger one has ADHD as well. And all of this combined it just made me want to learn more. And the less that they gave her or what they thought was appropriate was not. So I ended up pulling her out of public school and putting her in where I was teaching in an alternative school. And she did so well. It was what was appropriate for her. It's where she thrived because where I was teaching had everything to do with mental health first, disabilities first. If you can't feel comfortable in your own skin, what makes everybody think you're going to learn? And once you begin to come out of your shell, that's when you're going to start feeling good about yourself. That's where you're going to learn how to learn. And then you find your passion. And I've seen students come in with so many different diagnoses and kids with ADHD. I had one student who could not sit down during class. So he would go to the back of the class and he would pace and he'd get a test and he'd ace it. I'd had another student who had ADHD and she never took notes. All she did was doodle on the paper. Another brilliant student. It was just the way they're wired. They did not succeed in public school because no one would ever allow that. That's why I'm such a proponent for everything alternative, because so many individuals who don't meet the criteria for disabled and who don't meet the criteria for what I wouldn't even call it normal, because normal is just, a setting on a washing machine.
Yeah.
That the ones that fall through the cracks, the best way I can explain it, they're the ones that need the guidance, because nobody, even with the parents, nobody says to them, these are services available to you. These are things that you could do to help your child. And every young adult, every high school student should know what's going on with them. They should be involved in,
Agreed.
with their lessons. So
that's a huge part of why I even do what I do with this podcast, is because I was not diagnosed until I almost failed out of college. And, that learning that ADHD was such a game-changing piece of self-knowledge to learn. And as I got, into my 20s and finished grad school and realizing, I'm going to need more than just Adderall to figure out life.
Yep.
It's that feeling of being misunderstood that I think is one of the most painful human experiences, because it creates disconnection.
Yep.
And so, my goal here is to help people feel understood.
It creates disconnection, and then your self-esteem goes. And then you doubt what you're thinking and what you're doing. And then you wonder how severe, if you have a mental health condition, how severe is it? Am I going to be able to survive? And then the anxiety and the depression, it's like a big tumbleweed. And I didn't learn I had ADHD until I was in my 50s. What happened was I have a lot of issues with medication for my mental health condition. And they were very curious as to why I could take one thing and not another. And so there was a company called Genomine, and they offered a test that could tell you what could possibly be a problem and what you could possibly benefit from. And when I got the report back, they said I could possibly benefit from medication due to my ADHD.
Hey, I just want to jump in here real quick. So, genetic testing for getting the dosage or not dosage, the right medication for ADHD or any other mental health condition. I wanted to just double check because it's been about maybe a year or two since I looked at what the science said on that. And from what I have found, there is still not enough data to support this as an evidence based treatment. So, I mean, still to this, as of this recording, American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend these use of tests for kids. As far as adults, I've been looking for something that would say something similar or to affirm this as an approach. But what the stuff that I have seen in the past doesn't really support this yet. Could just the studies that have been done on this sample sizes are pretty small. Also, there's been some of the tests have been animals, which doesn't always translate to people. So, just wanted to put that out there. So, we're following some good evidence-based practices. All right, let's jump back in.
I said, what ADHD? And it was the final piece of my puzzle. It was the light bulb over my head. It was so emotional because I knew about ADHD. I knew the signs of ADHD. I know what untreated ADHD kids go through. I know that one of the biggest signs of ADHD is substance abuse disorder. I know that most kids with ADHD are brilliant, but they're not given the chance. And it affected me in such a way that it just pushed me even further to abdicate for kids, adults, teens, young adults, anybody. I think that there's so many individuals out there with ADHD. I think that we're normal more than they think we are. I think that we are the movers and shakers because we need people to think out of the box. We need people to look at things from a different angle in order to progress as a society.
Absolutely. I think that the importance of teaching critical thinking skills
Yes.
And asking why. You know, this
Yep.
I remember for years when I was younger, I used to think about this idea about like I felt like we were just being taught what, and we don't get to really learn why until you get into like grad school. And I wanted to know why from the time I was in first grade, because you know my teachers and my
Mhm.
parents were like, "Why does he need to ask why for everything?" And it's like, well, to be honest, it's because I'm trying to understand what the hell is going on, and in order to understand what the hell is going on, I need to have that bigger context of why this matters. Now, I'm not saying why do I have to do this because I'm trying to be oppositional or being a pain in the ass. Like I genuinely
Mhm.
am curious. I want to know why.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of certain types of education are very passive.
Yeah.
So you sit and you accumulate information and then you have to spit it back out. And then you have blended types of education where it's hands-on and it's passive. And then you have education that is totally immersed in cooperation. I taught a type of education or learning called democratic school or free school. And it was not divided into classes like grades, but ability. So I had a student who was 11 years old, absolute genius, and was taking senior science. A lot of them are self motivated, and we were more facilitators than teachers. And it worked for those kids. A lot of them have gone off to do really crazy things, but they've gone off to do what they wanted to do and their happiness. And happiness is underrated. We're more productive if we're happy. And I find that the mindfulness is what kicked in my happiness the most, because I saw that anxiety, once it started happening, I saw myself actually just calm down. I didn't react. I said, give me a minute. So,
well, we're going to give you a minute because we're going to take a minute to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will talk more about mindfulness-based stress reduction. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from ARC. ARC is ADHD Rewired Coaching. Discover our life-changing online coaching and accountability groups at coachingrewired.com. Our winter season of coaching and accountability groups has just concluded, and the transformative spring season is about to begin, starting on March 30th and running through June 8th. This is your last chance to join the spring season and experience the incredible growth you've been longing for. While 2 of our sections are now full, we do still have some spots available in sections led by our compassionate and experienced coaches, Kat Hoyer and Kristen Martz. Don't let this opportunity slip away. Visit coachingrewired.com right now to add your name to our spring interest list and start your pre-registration process now. Join our registration event on Thursday, March 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and embark on your journey to a more fulfilling life. Do you ever wonder what it would be like to embrace your ADHD and live wholeheartedly? Or do you have a vision of the life you want to lead, but feel stuck in a loop, unable to make meaningful progress on your most important goals? Imagine the profound impact of building a solid foundation to support your wholehearted life, all while learning and growing alongside other adults with ADHD who truly get you.
This group is like a scaffolding for us to move from intention to action. And the scaffolding's above the muck and the stories and everything else. If you have a scaffolding in a building, you're renovating it. You could be renovating or renewing it. And that building is us.
This group is like an iceberg. The surface level benefits are obvious: increasing productivity, managing time blindness, learning how to plan effectively based on your values and personal goals. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. What lies underneath is so much more amazing and massive and powerful.
This group of strangers, we got together and we came into this thing thinking we were our own special kind of broken. But we grew together, uplifted each other, and saw how we're not broken and we're not alone. And we built this beautiful community of support. I saw this group and I knew this was my place.
The moments that were most meaningful were the little epiphanies that you see in others during sessions, just the small judgment-free check-ins like on the A team, all the way to like admin office hours or just even like community events. I am most proud of being able to undertake this journey with everyone else and feeling like I was able to provide some contribution to each other's growth.
I came in thinking I would just learn how to do the things I hated doing, like report writing and mundane tasks. And the thing that I learned, and sort of the biggest takeaway from this, is that it affects all parts of my life, and I needed a lot more support than I thought I did.
I was uncertain about group coaching. I just hadn't ever done that, and I'm amazed at the value of group work. I really underestimated, or I really am just so pleasantly surprised with the impact that the group work has had on me to add a sense of community to my life, that sense of accountability that comes with a group that really is benevolent. And that's just so lovely and something that's just been so hard to find.
Another thing about this group is that you learn and are held accountable for actually practicing the skills over and over again. And so that's been really, really helpful. If you're thinking about joining this group, there's really nothing like being with a bunch of ADHDers, and that we're a really remarkably diverse group of people. I was surprised at how varied everyone was, except for the one thing, which is that we all have ADHD.
If you're thinking about joining this group, I've never liked the idea for myself of any kind of group coaching or therapy or support groups. I've always figured my difficulties were so severe that I needed the full attention of an individual coach or therapist, and that I would not be able to get enough out of a group. However, group coaching through ARC has been more beneficial than I possibly could have imagined. It's been amazing being surrounded by people, including the coach, who all have ADHD.
Registration is by invitation only, and this is the final week to join our spring season. Go now to coachingrewire.com, click on that purple button at the top of the page to start your pre-registration process and receive the instructions you'll need to complete before receiving your invitation. And don't forget to check your spam folder just to make sure you're getting that email. If you have questions, hold on to them and bring them to our last registration event this week on Thursday, March 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Get answers, connect with others, and uncover the true potential of our coaching groups. Living with ADHD can be challenging, but it doesn't have to define your life. When you join our intensive online coaching and accountability groups, you'll gain more than just tips, tricks, and strategies. You'll be supported by a community that genuinely understands and cares about you, ensuring you never walk this path alone. To find out more, start your pre-registration process and join us for our final registration event this week on Thursday, March 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Visit coachingrewire.com. Your chance to grow and thrive awaits. But don't wait. That's coachingrewire.com. All right, we are back with Emily Sussman. All right, so Emily, you got into mindfulness and then got certified as a mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor. So talk to us. Let's break this down. What is, I want to hear your definition of mindfulness, especially for maybe new listeners who are new to all of this. So what's your definition of mindfulness? And then let's talk about what is mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Okay. So everybody has a different definition. And I hope I do John Kevinson good. I hope he's proud of me when I say it's about being aware and awake now. It's about focusing on now. It's about understanding your mind, body, soul connection. It's about learning the tools and changing your perception. And all of this is put together by kindness and being non-judgmental. Because we are the worst on ourselves. It's just like the universe. If you treat everybody with kindness, you should be able to treat yourself with kindness, but it doesn't always happen. I learned about mindfulness in grad school, and it was such a small part of what I learned because it has recently, or I don't know exactly when it became an evidence-based practice. And they use it mostly for individuals with PTSD. And I can see how it works because it worked for me. I graduated in May of 2020. Now, we all know May of 2020 was during the lockdown.
It was the start of the shit show.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. So my shit show was I was unable to secure an internship in order to get to sit for my certification. There were so many different variables, and nobody knew what was going to happen and how long people were going to be working from home and how long offices were going to be closed and what was going to happen with people who are interning. So I am not one to sit on my butt. So I became really depressed. I was like, I worked so long, so hard, and I'm not a kid, I have a family that depended upon me. Everybody sacrificed. And 7 years it took for me to go through college. And I'm proud of myself, but I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed. And you know what? I'm not the only one. I'm not alone, but that doesn't negate how I felt. And this is all part of the mindfulness. It'll all make sense to you in a few minutes. So with all of my mental health conditions, there was nothing left for me to do. I was in therapy. I was taking medication. There was nothing left for me to do. What was I going to do? So I said, well, I'm going to try mindfulness. It is evidence-based. I hear good things about it, but I really know nothing. I thought mindfulness was yoga and meditation. Boy, was I wrong. So I signed up at UMass for my first class in mindfulness-based stress reduction. So I repeatedly took the same class because I wasn't getting it. So much was going on during that period as well, depression, anxiety, nothing was working. It started to work.
And you were doing remote learning too, right?
Yes.
Which is
I
hard.
did my whole college education remotely.
Oh my gosh.
So it was.
Oh my gosh. I remember when I was an undergrad, this was 20 some years ago, I took an online class during a winter interim. So it was like a 3 weeks for one class, right? And so everything's packed. And I just remember like the first day, I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do. Like, I just remember like, oh god, because it just required like reading a bunch of stuff and then writing all your responses in these like old school forums, and like some bad video I think was part of it, and oh man, so I know online learning has gotten so much better now, but it's especially if you're not used to that, it is that could be so hard.
7 years. And you have ADHD, and you have to be self-driven, and you have to be able to manage your time. What did that for me was the alternative school.
How so?
I was able to, because free schooling or democratic schooling is self-driven, and I knew how to motivate them, I knew how to motivate myself. So everything was kind of falling into place for me. It was like the perfect storm. There was a lot of struggling. Don't get me wrong. There was more struggle than there were good days. And over the last 2.5 years with mindfulness and getting my certification and, deciding where my career is going, and I'm one of these people who has to be passionate. I'm not going to do a good job if I'm not passionate about it. And happiness isn't about having money. It's about being able to pay your bills and to put your head on your pillow and then wake up in the morning and go, ooh, I get to go to work today. That's how I felt. Especially mindfulness gave me a sense of purpose on top of my sense of purpose. I, like many people who have ADHD, have a difficult time expressing myself without getting angry, because a lot of people don't understand what I'm saying, where I'm going with it. I'm not explaining it well enough. And when people say that to me, sometimes I'm like, well, I was a teacher and I was a good teacher. How could I not be explaining to you well enough? I think a lot of it's got to do with what kind of relationship I have.
Do you think too that there's a part of it that is explaining things about your perspective is different than explaining like concepts?
Yes. And mindfulness works on perspective too.
Talk about that.
When you are meditating and say you're breathing and you want to focus on something, okay? And like I would say, you know what? You've got 5 minutes. Let's do a quick body scan. Okay. So when they say body scan, what you're going to do is you're going to find your anchor minus my breath. So you would breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 2, and out for 6. And you would do it like 3 or 4 times. And once you get, you'll find yourself in a zone and your body will be relaxed. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start at your feet. You're going to acknowledge the sensation. Are they tingling? Is there pain? Why is there pain? Do you feel nothing? That's okay. Most people feel stress in certain parts of their body. I carry my stress in my stomach. So when I first started to meditate with mindfulness, there were all of these different sensations that were in my stomach. And instead of letting them rule me, I acknowledged them as just pain, as just a reaction to something. It wasn't me. I wasn't the pain. It was a reaction to something. Well, what was that something? Are you hungry? Are you stressed? Are you having a panic attack? All of these things you would think of, and then eventually after a time, you'd be able to link that sensation to what the cause was. And when you would wrap loving kindness around it and say, it's going to be okay. It's not there forever. It's there for now. And that's, even though the key is to pay attention to now, the knowledge of acknowledging it and giving it love and then moving on is amazing, because your perception is not focused on it anymore. It's moving on to something else. And then when you've completed, I don't know, I meditate 2 hours a day.
Do you really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I meditate an hour in the morning and an hour at night. It is my breath. It is what I need to survive. I never thought I did. You know, my perception of it wasn't what it is of today.
So I'm imagining that there's lots of listeners who just went 2 hours. This person has ADHD. What, like, how?
Because it makes you feel so good. And you don't even know you're meditating that long. I have to put on, sometimes I have to put a timer on. So like if I only have like a half hour to meditate, but you get into a zone and you become so relaxed. That's why a lot of people who do mindfulness meditation fall asleep. I fell asleep for 6 months in a row. I couldn't get past my knees with body scan. And that is so normal because you're not used to being so relaxed. It's like, oh, wow, this feels really great.
So you're saying if people have had experiences with meditation, but they say, oh, but I fall asleep, you're saying that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. There's no such thing as clearing your mind. I mean, we'd be dead. Okay. There's no such thing. It's focus. It's allowing your mind to run through the reel. It's like a silent movie. You run through the reel. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going down that rabbit hole. Let me come back to my breath.
I know too. Breathe. So much of my meditation experiences have been like the harder I've tried to clear the mind, the busier the mind gets. Right. And so it's just like this noticing and allowing whatever is to be,
Yep.
In your definition of mindfulness, you talked about it's about the now. But what kept kind of the reframe in my mind when you were saying that was like, well, it's not just the now, but it's how in the now, right? Because
that's it. That's it. You know what? Yeah, I can agree with that. It's about how in the now and understanding, and about being awake and aware of what's happening at this moment, and that takes you out of the rumination and the anticipation.
There's a lot of things I think around, in self-care. So whether it's meditation or exercise or sleep, that when we realize the impact of either not getting enough of it or like just how much it impacts us, it becomes almost like you were saying, it becomes like our oxygen, right? Like I know for me, anytime my exercise routine slips, so does my mental health. I start kind of hating everything and everybody. And like, I don't want to do anything and I'm irritable and like, just nothing seems fun. And it's just like, I don't even like being with myself. And it's like, oh, I haven't exercised in like 4 days. Like, and I need to go get a sweat. Right. And that's, and so it's knowing and having that experience and having a lot of repetition of how this benefits us. Same thing, like just recently, I'm now on 3 weeks of the best sleep I think I've had in my entire life. Like,
could you tell me how that happens? Because I don't sleep.
Oh my gosh. I wish it was something like, so it's funny. Anytime I've improved on my sleep, it's always been like in response to some kind of pain. And so I had a really bad cold and I hate being sick. Like, cause my brain, all I focus on is the physical sensations of being sick. And like, when someone says like,
mindfulness,
when someone's like, oh, it's just a cold. I'm like, just a cold. Colds are miserable. Like, I can't breathe. Like my face is like, feels like it's a balloon that's gonna pop. Like, so I was like, all right, I got to do everything I can to get rid of this cold. Right. So I started getting to bed early. And then like I was noticing as the cold was starting to get better and I was continuing to get to bed early. Oh, and I in work, I had a lot of writing stuff I needed to do. And I was like, this was actually coming kind of easily, because I often will there's two tasks that I always feel a lot of internal resistance for. It's writing and when I have to initiate contact with another human being, like a phone call or, something like that, or it's if I need to call a service desk somewhere, or, just something like that. And I was noticing that I'm like, huh. I even did a thing earlier this week. So I play piano, I play keyboards, and I have a keyboard that I've had for, I don't know, about 10 years. In the last 4 or 5 years, the screen on this keyboard has been really dark and kind of hard to see.
Mhm.
And so recently I've been kind of looking for other keyboards. I'm like, I wonder if I can get this fixed. But I've been thinking about wondering if this is fixable for the last 5 years. So the other day, I picked up the phone and made a couple calls, and I found a place that I could take it that's about 15 minutes from my house that could fix it. And it's like,
Oh,
huh, is that what sleep can do for me? That's kind of awesome.
yeah. Sleep is wonderful. I haven't slept well since I gave birth.
I have heard that before.
I have the mother brain. Every 3 hours I'm up.
Oh man.
It's on and off. It's gotten better over the years. It was all dependent on the anxiety.
Well, the idea what I wanted to bring about why I'm sharing this is you hear you say about 2 hours of meditation, or me talking about exercising regularly, or getting myself to bed earlier. But all these things, are they hard? Yeah, especially if it's not something you're used to doing. But once you experience the benefits, and that's I think the key to anything that we are doing that feels hard, especially in the beginning, it's well, what's the why? And one of the things I know that you shared, and I've experienced similar things when I've been in a practice of meditation, because I am an on again, off again meditator, and I have been for the last 20 years, is just the ease that certain things happen that in other scenarios I would find difficult, like transitioning. When I'm meditating, transitioning is I don't feel the resistance. And it's funny because what will happen for me is that automatic thought will kind of come up about a transition, but then I just find myself transitioning. So it was the resistance thought was there, but the behavior or emotion behind it wasn't. So I don't want to do this. And I was like, wait, when did I even start doing this? I'm doing this right now, And I notice when I'm meditating, that happens more often. What I would love to do, Emily, is take a quick break. And when we come back, you mentioned doing a body scan. How would you feel about guiding us through?
Sure,
a body scan?
I can absolutely do. I can do a short one. Not a problem.
Awesome. All right, we will be right back. Hey, did you know that ADHD Rewired is not alone? Check out all of the podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network by going to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network and subscribe to this show and all of our shows. And don't forget to hit subscribe to this show in your favorite podcast player if you find value in this show and discover new ways to manage your ADHD every week. You can find resources we mention in every episode when you go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast. So if you think there's an episode or a resource that might be helpful for someone else, then share this episode or any of the episodes with your friends, family, therapist, or anyone that you think would benefit from hearing our interviews and conversations that come out each and every week. Like next week's episode, where I'll be joined by Nate to talk about misaligned opportunities with the potential and value that neurodivergent individuals can bring. And if you want to get even more tips and tricks to your ADHD-related questions, go to ADHDrewired.com/events to register so you can join me and the rest of the ADHD Rewired podcast family and ADHD Rewired coaches every second Tuesday of the month for our monthly live Q&A on Zoom. And if you missed this past one, it'll be out next month, second Tuesday of the month, where we had Scoots from the Sleep With Me podcast join us, and it was fantastic. It was so much fun. Find this podcast and our archives and our show notes and the entire ADHD Rewired podcast network all by going to ADHDrewired.com. You can register for our monthly live Q&As, learn about our study halls, our coaching program, and everything else that we got going on here. That's all at ADHDrewired.com. And thanks for listening. So Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our amazing patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Perks start at just $5 a month, where you can listen to this episode without any interruptions. And we're trying out something new by putting our ads at the very end of the episode for our patrons, so no one misses out on what's happening with the ADHD Rewired community. If you become a patron at $25 a month, then you can join me next week on March 28th for our monthly coaching call. Otherwise, our monthly coaching calls are every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And that's for patrons who join us at just $25 a month. This is a great opportunity for you to get a little bit of help from me for being a patron. But if you can't make it and you don't want to miss what happens on those coaching calls, then consider joining us at $10 a month. Then you can get the audio recordings of those coaching calls that we do in our patron-only private podcast feed. While ADHD Rewired is free to listeners, it's not free to produce. Our patrons who support us at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon not only help us stay independent, they also help us cover things like storage and hosting and editing services, equipment and maintenance, and everything we need to keep this show running smoothly. And we've recently had a little bit of a dip in our patrons. So right now, with all those costs, we're about breaking even with all the costs for the podcast. So if you find value in this show and it's in the budget for you right now, one way that you can support us is by becoming a patron over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Again, perks start at just $5 a month, and support can start at any amount that makes sense to you. Thank you to all of our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon for supporting us. We really do appreciate all of you. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thank you so much. All right, we are back with Emily Sussman. Now, if you're driving, I mean, you could listen to this, but if Emily tells us to close our eyes, please don't.
I don't, if you are using any heavy equipment, if you're at work and you need to pay attention to what you're doing, just kind of like mute me for a while, because this is a body scan. The idea is to relax you and to understand the sensations in your body. So before we start, there are a couple of things that you have to understand about mindfulness. One is you got to find your anchor or your home base. Most people use the breath. Some use a sound, some use a body part. What that means is when you are focusing and you're focusing on your breath, and all of a sudden you find yourself somewhere else, you want to come back to your breath because it's going to refocus and you're going to be able to continue meditating. This is going to happen a lot of times. Expect it to happen. Everybody experiences it. It's part of learning what meditation is, what mindfulness is. Another thing about mindfulness is it affects every part of your life. And this is because when you're learning mindfulness, you do things mindfully. I'm making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. What am I doing? I'm taking the bread out of the bag. Then what am I doing? I'm closing the bag. And every step of making that peanut butter and jelly sandwich is mindful. And you're thinking about, well, how do I feel? How does it taste? What is the texture in your mouth? This is mindfulness, is understanding sensation, understanding what your focus can be on. It's about mindful eating. It's about mindful walking. It's about mindful yoga. It is everything you do in life is mindful, and it's not going to happen. You're going to have days where you're going to do some here, some there. And this is my experience. So what the outcome for the body scan, in my opinion, is to understand your relationship to your body and what it says to you. And just to look at it, don't react. Don't have an emotion. Just acknowledge it, that it's there, thank it, and move on.
It's funny when I'm leading mindfulness exercises in our coaching groups. One of the things I'll share sometimes is that if you get an itch, consider it a gift. Notice it and don't scratch it.
But that's really good. I like that. Thank you. Okay, so get into a position. Usually the body scan is done lying down, but I would say get into a position where your feet are on the floor and you're comfortable. Everything with mindfulness is a suggestion. It's all about what you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable in one position and I may suggest to use that position, you don't have to. It's all about what makes you comfortable, okay? And your anchor. It doesn't have to be your breath. That's just the most common one. You can have your ankle, your foot, your ear. As long as it's bringing back your attention on the moment, then that's fine. Okay, so if you will, close your eyes and just relax your body as much as you can. Place both of your feet on the floor. Acknowledge that you are grounded. What do you feel? Are you supported? Do you feel safe? Does this help with becoming comfortable and relaxed? Now we're going to breathe. Everybody's like, well, I breathe every day. Well, I'm going to teach you how to breathe. First thing you're going to do is we're going to breathe in for the count of 4. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 2. Out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason why you want to breathe out more than in is because it helps you to relax. Now, your breath is very important if it's your anchor or not, because you're going to be breathing a lot to calm down and to focus. So naturally just breathe. What do you notice about your breath? Do you feel anything going up through your nose? Is it cold? Do you feel your lungs expanding? Is it in your diaphragm or in your chest? Just breathe naturally and think about where the breath is going and where it is coming from. As you breathe naturally, imagine a bright light full of happiness, positive energy. You're breathing that in. It's in the lungs. It becomes incorporated into every single one of your blood cells. And these travel your body faster than the speed of light. All of a sudden, you're feeling a calm. Keep breathing in and out. Now, you have to bring in the breath, so you have to bring the breath out. Think of this breath as removing all of your negative feelings, all of the unnecessary aches and pains. Just allow it to wash through you and out in your breath. Continue to breathe. And the next breath you take, I want you to follow it all the way down to your feet. Imagine that white light, that calm, that sense of happiness and being. As it fills your feet, I want you to acknowledge what you're feeling in your feet. Not everybody has a sensation there. They could feel like nothing. Your toes could tingle or be cold, or they could be hot. The underneath in your arches could be killing you because you've been walking and on them all day. Just acknowledge that pain and how hard you worked. Acknowledge it. Wrap a little bit of loving kindness around it. And tell them it's okay to feel that way. Next, we're going to move on to our calves, knees, and shins. Breathe in the positive feeling. Breathe in and out. Relax as you breathe in and out. What are you feeling? What is the sensation? Are your calves tight or are they loose? Are they throbbing? Is there pain? And then your knees. Same thing. Is there pain? Is there no pain? Could they be tingling? What is the cause? Does it matter? Breathe life and happiness and calm and all positive energies into those parts of your body. Allow them to relax. Acknowledge the sensation. Give it a hug and move on. We're going to our thighs, our hips at this moment, around the front and the middle of our stomach and the small of our back and the butt. Now, a lot of people will claim that their stomach is where they hold their anxiety. So before we focus on any other body part, I want you to focus on your stomach and really think about what you're feeling. Isolate it. Do you feel like a pulling sensation? Or is there a stabbing pain? Is it fluttering? Or is there nothing at all and you're fine? It could even be making noise. That's normal. It could be growling because you're hungry. That's normal. Wrap loving kindness around the sensations you feel in your stomach now. Do not label them. Just be a bystander. You're just observing. Let's move on to our hips, our lower back, and our butt. This whole area can also carry anxiety, especially your lower back. You always hear people saying that Their tension is always in this part of the back. If you have tension right now, just focus on how that feels. Is it tight like making a fist? Is it more of a shooting pain when you move? How does these sensations affect you? Don't look at the sensation as if owning them, as if they are you. Look at them as something that's happening at this moment. Acknowledge them. Add a little loving kindness and move on. The rest of your back, your shoulders, your neck, your arms, and your hands, clumping them all together isn't advisable, but we're short on time. A lot of people feel the stress in their neck and in their shoulders. So this is where I want you to focus. Focus on that area. What do you feel? How does it make you feel? What do you think caused it? Is it important, the cause? Is it a rational cause? Acknowledge those sensations. Wrap a little loving kindness around them and move on. Right now, I would like you to return to your breath and just breathe normal. In and out. I'm going to lead in a little bit of guided meditation. If you find yourself going off somewhere, remember your anchor. You always have your breath. Acknowledge all of those thoughts. Say thank you and move on. Do not dwell. Just move on. Breathe in and out. Focus on your breath. Where is your breath traveling to? Follow it. But for the next minute, I'm going to keep silent and then we'll wrap it up. If your mind has wandered off, go back to your anchor. Focus. Breathe in. Breathe out. Relax. As you're breathing out, breathe out all of the tension. Let it go. Breathe in new life, joy, comfort. Relax. Because we are inside of our bodies, and not outside. We are more aware of what is going on the inside. I'm going to bring us back to the outside of our bodies. Remove your focus from your breath. Think about what's going on around you on the outside. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes, wriggle your fingers, or, stamp your feet, just to wake up and come back to the here and now. Welcome back.
Thanks for that, Emily.
Oh, you're welcome. Now I'm even calmer. Even when I guide a group, and I usually use some kind of a script, I just wing this one. It doesn't give me that sense of calm as if I was following, but it always gives me that sense of calm.
Yeah.
Like right now is like, I don't know. I sometimes I'd like to describe it as, and many of us will understand, as the caterpillar on top of the mushroom in, oh my God, Alice in Wonderland. That feeling, when you see him, it's like, that's what I think of. Everybody has a different perception of what comfort is and how to achieve it. But wherever I was going with that, I'm gone.
We do have to wrap this up here. One thing I actually wanted to ask you about, last year I did this, it was like a 36-hour training for therapists on trauma. And so
Okay.
there was a lot of stuff around mindfulness and body awareness. And one of the things that they actually said is that unless you know who you're working with and if they have a trauma history, that it's actually best to avoid doing stopping at like the butt and at
Yep.
the
Yeah.
reproductive
I
organs.
agree with you.
Mhm.
I agree with you. I did actually just forget about that it's always suggested, if it's too emotional, if it's bringing up bad memories, stop. This is all about you. It's about your path. It's not about, we don't tell you what to do, we suggest. And
I love that part of it, by the way, when you were setting it up, how you were saying anything that you're guiding us through is just a suggestion. And I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah. No, and nobody wants to be told what to do. I know it brings out the rebel in me. It's just a knee-jerk reaction.
It is funny that when we're given the option to do what we want, we tend to do what we're being asked to do.
Yeah. It's your choice.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it that way. I don't always do exactly what they suggest. I do what makes me comfortable. And yes, if you've had a trauma that's recent and you're having reoccurrence of mental health conditions, mindfulness is not for you. It is something that you need to work out with after.
Or with a mental health professional.
Or a professional. I know that through all of my training, they say that don't attempt mindfulness. Don't, if you feel that bad, because a lot of the times your mind is going to go to that, and it's only going to make it worse. And you want to not avoid, but get professional help and work through it, not around it. That's part of mindfulness, is working through it, even though it hurts.
Yeah. Not avoiding. That's, it's some of the hardest things that I have chosen to go through have led to some of the kind of greatest parts of my life. It really has. Emily Sussman, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
On.
I hope that I, maybe helped one or two people out there not to feel so alone. And there's help out there for everyone. Just make that first call. That's always the hardest part, especially as you were saying about making that call to get the piano fixed. Make the call. That's the most important thing. Awareness, being awake.
We will get the link to how people can reach you on the show notes for this page, but go ahead and tell people how they can reach you.
If you want to reach me, my email is always the best. I'm in transition with my website. I'm also on LinkedIn. My email is Emily Sussman Counseling, all one word, @gmail.com. And you can check me out on LinkedIn at Emily Sussman.
All right. And we will get the links to that on this episode's show notes. So, Emily, thank you for being here with us in the now. But now we are out of time.
Thank you, Eric. Take care now.
It's a pleasure. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great. starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and the Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.